Welcome. Good morning to those of you who are gathered here in the sanctuary on Rugby Road, and to all who are joining us on Zoom. As we come together this morning for worship, we begin with a musical prelude offered by Scott Deveaux. Greetings and welcome to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville. My name is Caroline Landis, and it is wonderful that we are gathered together for worship this morning, both online and here on Rugby Road. This sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on land that was the homeland of the Monacan people, and that was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led to this moment of our gathering as a community of memory and hope. I invite you now to take a moment to greet others who are with us in worship this morning. Those online can unmute and say hello to one another, and those of us here in the sanctuary or social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you may not know.
Good morning.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Boy, they've got a lot of people in church. That's great.
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Hello,
Hi, everybody. Hi, Deborah. See you all.
Rosalie and Stephen.
Wow,
You're a
full
noisy
too.
group.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of people.
They're having fun.
That's great.
I just couldn't get myself out of the house this morning.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's cold.
Yeah.
I managed to walk around our pond. It was beautiful.
Oh,
Great.
But that didn't give me time to come to church. So
I'm gonna
do
have to
both.
meet you all again.
It is good to be together. And invite you to join us for fellowship after the service. Feel free to use one of our red coffee mugs, which are for newcomers to our congregation. We continue to ask that everyone in the sanctuary and throughout the building keep your high-quality N95 or KN95 masks in place, covering both your nose and your mouth. If you don't have a face mask with you, we have extras available. When you are in the social hall, you may remove your mask while actively eating or drinking, but we ask that you, those not actively eating or drinking, please keep your masks on. We see the continued use of face masks while indoors as an act of kindness that keeps everyone, especially those most at risk, as safe as possible while continuing to navigate life during the ongoing pandemic and flu season. Hand sanitizer is also provided in pews, which we invite you to use as needed. In addition to seating in our sanctuary, seating is available in the social hall where you can watch a live stream of the service. Families with young children are most welcome in the sanctuary, but if you need a roomier space, the social hall is also a good option. Please do whatever you need to feel comfortable as we worship together this morning. Many thanks to all the folks helping us share worship both here and online, our on-site greeters, ushers, and hospitality and logistics team, and special thanks to our AV tech team of Rachel Buckland and Sean Scally, supporting the dual platform worship both online here on Rugby Road and online. Thanks to our director of music, Scott Deveaux, for sharing his musical gifts. And I'm pleased this morning to be the worship weaver with Rev Tim. Now here to greet you from your Board of Trustees is Steve Brecker.
Good morning. I am Steve Brecker, and I'm a member of your Board of Trustees, and it's my pleasure to welcome all members and guests to our worship service today. I wanted to share with you some recent activities, things that the board is working on. We are moving ahead with finalizing the updating of the sign on the front brick wall with our new name, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville. And the sign task force will be meeting with our vendor on site this week to review the final layout and samples of the new letters so that the replacement of the old sign can begin. Can we hear some applause? Our website now has a newly revised section dedicated to the congregation's work on our UUCville developmental goals. And to get to this section, you just go to our homepage and you click on the new box link. We'll be using this web section going forward to communicate and engage with the congregation as we work to actualize our developmental goals. So we hope everybody will go there and read up. The board has reviewed several bids from HVAC contractors to replace the failing system over at the Summit House, and we've now narrowed it down to 2 companies, and we hope to make a final decision at our January meeting. So that's an update from the board. I will be available in the fellowship hall after the service and look forward to meeting you all and hearing your thoughts and ideas about the work of the church. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. We are delighted to welcome a new art show for this month of January and next month of February. The Boz Arts Collective is featuring works of Brita Lindberger, Christine Rich, and Joan Dreiser. They are with us today, and would you please stand to be recognized if you're here? Yay, they're in the back. Awesome. You can meet the artists for coffee in the social hall after the service. Are you new to the UU congregation of Charlottesville? If you are, please join us at 12:15 here in the sanctuary for our monthly newcomer circle. Rev Tim and several lay leaders will be present to answer questions about the congregation and Unitarian Universalism. So please join us for 30 minutes in relaxed conversation here in the social hall. A reminder to delete emails or texts that claim to be from Rev Tim saying he urgently needs you to contact him. They are not from Rev Tim. So please do not respond and block those messages and the sender if you are able to. Next Sunday, we will honor the life and ministry of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The service will be followed by a conversation here in the sanctuary. We hope you can join us. And now let us center for worship.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. By the way, you, of course, should still email me. But if you get an email that says, "This is Tim, Reverend Tim, and I just desperately need to hear from you," that's email my email before you answer that, because this is the time of year when a lot of folks who are, trying to play on people's goodwill take advantage. So please make sure you do that. Okay, now to the good stuff. I want to begin this morning with call to worship from my colleague, Reverend Scott Alexander. Come, dear friends, come into this hour of worship and togetherness. Come with eyes that are ready to see, a throat that is willing to sing, ears that are open to hear, a mind that is eager to know, and a heart that is poised to love and be loved. Enter, friends, enter fully into this hour of worship and togetherness and be blessed. Come, let us worship together. As our service begins, I'd like to invite you to rise now in body or spirit. Let's join in singing our opening hymn. It's number 34 in the gray hymnal, but the words will also be on the screen. I forgot the title. Though I may speak with bravest fire. Please rise.
I now invite Carol Saliba to light our chalice. Carol, Rachel, can you put the words of the unison chalice lighting up on the screen, please? We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open minds. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving hearts.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to invite our young people and their RE volunteers to come forward now and join me up front here on the red rug. Happy New Year, everybody. It is so nice to see so many people here in our sanctuary and to know that others are joining us online this morning. It just feels good to be together. So come on up, there's plenty of room. Scoot forward, yeah, make space. And I'm looking for those adults who are so privileged to spend time with our children this morning to come forward now as well. Yeah, and then anybody else who just feels young at heart or wants to have a chance to sit on the red rug, you are welcome to be here as well. Yeah. So this month, we, all of us, the adults, the children, we're going to be talking this month about searching for our center. Searching for our center. I'm wondering, does anybody know what that might mean? What do you think? It might be in our hearts. I like that idea. Yeah. What else do you think of when you think of finding your center? Ethan? Could be in our brains. Yes, absolutely. Maybe it's in our hearts. Maybe it's in our brains. Wow. Any other thoughts about finding our center? June? Finding the true you. Yes. I like that idea too. Maybe it's a combination of all those things. What's in our heart, what's in our heads, what is our true you. And one of the things that I get excited about is that when we all come together at church, when we're all here together, that's one of the things we do. We explore what is at our center, what is the most important to us, and how might we help each other find that. Now, some of you know this, but some of you may not, that Caroline, who's up here as worship weaver today with Reverend Tim, she used to be a little person like you sitting on the red rug. I've known Caroline a long time. She grew up in this church. And I told her I wanted to ask her today what helped her find her center when she was at church.
So I think my experience in religious education, but especially during YRUU and coming of age, I found some of my bestest friends and some of my most trusted mentors in my life. And I found such support and love from this faith community, and that really helped me find my center.
Yeah. We're so glad for that. Absolutely. And that's something we want for all of us, for everybody here, to have good friends, to make connections, to feel supported in growing and searching and finding your center, finding what is most important to you. And one of the ways we do that is with this funny little arch of candles that we have up front. And I know we've talked about this some before, but Reverend Tim and I talked about wanting to have this on our altar this morning because in all of our children's RE classes and in our youth classes, we have a, what's it called? Rainbow chalice, yes. And it helps us remember what it is that's important to us, what's at the center for us as Unitarian Universalists. So this winter and spring, as you all come to church, every Sunday, you're going to light a different candle on the rainbow chalice in your room to be thinking about what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist, what's at the center of being a Unitarian Universalist. So we don't have time right now to light all of these candles, but I'm going to ask Caroline to take, actually, Reverend Tim, if you get a long match there, I'm going to ask Caroline to light, and you can use a light from up there, or Reverend Tim's going to light the match from the chalice, which is lovely too. So Caroline, if you want to slip around there, you probably have an easier way to get to it. I'm going to light our green candle. We often start with our red one, so that's one a lot of people know. But our green candle speaks to the center. Anybody remember what the green candle reminds us of? Put your thinking cap on. So it's the green candle. So it starts with the letter G. Anybody? Anybody? Generosity is a good one, but that's not it. Do you remember, Caroline? Grow. Yeah, growing in our ongoing search for truth and meaning. Yeah, so that's what our green candle reminds us, and that's pretty much at the center, isn't it? Growing in our ongoing search for truth and meaning. Yeah. So the other thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is that we have these beautiful lanterns here that I'm going to ask Reverend Tim to light from the flame of the chalice. And these lanterns are in our sanctuary every Sunday, and they go out with our children to their religious education classes. So they take the light from the chalice that we all light together, and it guides them to their learning spaces, and then they light the chalice in their classrooms with the light from these lanterns. So 2 things to remember today: the rainbow chalice, and it's for all ages, There were a lot of wondering minds when I said, what is the green candle? So we'll have opportunities for all of us to reflect and learn about the rainbow chalice and to be mindful of when we light our children's lanterns that guide them to class. And that's what we're going to do right now. Scott's going to play for us our hymn that we sing as we celebrate our children being with us and then going off together for their learning this morning. So you are invited to rise in body or spirit as we sing as we leave this friendly place.
Our first reading this morning is by Robbie Walsh and called Tucked In. On a quiet street, just as it was getting dark, I saw a car pull into a driveway, and then the silhouette of a man walking from the car to the front door of the house, carrying a sleeping child. The child's head lay on the man's shoulder, their arms and legs dangling like the limbs of a puppet. They went to the door and into the house, and my imagination filled in the rest of the story. My mind went back 25 years ago to a time when I was that dad, pulling into our driveway and finding one or more of my children sleeping so soundly that even carrying them in and dressing them for bed did not wake their slumber. And in my mind, I went back 50 years to when I was that child, and I remembered how safe I felt in the darkening back seat. I could put my head down, trusting that nothing bad would happen. And then I would wake up in bed thinking, how did I get here? And I realized my parents had carried me from the car, put me in bed, and tucked me in. The early Universalists believed that the fate of a human being is like that. No matter how rough the trip might have been or how badly you might have behaved, at the end of the day, you would come home, and it would be a place of trust, safety, and love. 200 years ago, many people were amazed to hear that kind of message because most churches told them that at the end of their journey, they were most likely to face punishment, not love. So, is the ultimate truth that our souls will be taken care of in the way of a loving parent takes care of a child? I don't know. Certainly, much of life is not like that. I have no answers to the ultimate questions, but I do have some partial truths. Here is one. There is love in this world. There is trust, and there are places of safety where a person can lay down their head for just a little while. The world is not always like this, but I'm absolutely certain the world is partially a place of love. And wherever that love comes from, it is manifested in this world by human beings. We are the agents of that love.
Thank you, Caroline. It's a great joy to be able to share worship with you this morning. I'm so tempted to go off on my sermon right now, but we have more to do before I get there. But I'll just say that for those of you who've been here before and heard me preach, that Robbie Walsh was my first Unitarian Universalist minister. In many ways, he's the reason I became a UU, and his vision and way of just using story and metaphor to explain what our faith tradition is about just touched me so deeply. And much of what I articulate on Sunday mornings, I hear his voice and his thought in what I have to say. And so I just want to, again, offer my gratitude to him and his beautiful words. Friends, we are part of an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. And I will now light a candle for all the joys and sorrows. If I can get it to light here, there we go. That remain unspoken, but deep in our hearts.
This community offers its love and support to what is closest to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and congregation. Our monthly social action collection in January is being taken for PACEM, and today we welcome PACEM's Liz Nyberg.
Hello. Am I standing close enough? Hi. Good morning. Took some notes, so. Thank you for inviting PACEM to speak of our collective good works. You guys actually hosted us our first opening weeks back in November, and through your care, all right. You're good. Through your care and kindness, we are one of those places of love where any adult can come home to safety, if just for a night at a time. I want to share a good story first. Ellen was one of the ones with us at Summit House. We sheltered, fed, and clothed her. We gave her comfort, and this foundation of love allowed us to be a conduit for a greater work of love. Her family was seeking her out to return her to the care and comfort of their home, and she left us soon after Thanksgiving. And this is the kind of story that we have told many, many times before. Since 2004, more than 1,700 people have been supported by PACEM during the coldest months and their darkest hours. Shelter saves lives. In 2020, when COVID hit, we began an incredible dance to pivot and adapt to this new reality. And we are currently operating 2 distinct shelter programs. So the congregation-based winter shelter like you hosted, as well as a hotel-based shelter program. These will unfortunately come to an end this spring. Our winter shelter will, as it does, close for the season. But our hotel shelter, after 3 long years of operation, will close to make way for the construction of new low-income housing. That means that the folks that remain will no longer have that option. The need is as great as ever. We've been hosting 25 folks a night, but at the beginning of every night this season, we've been getting between 35 and 40 individuals. And that's on top of the more than 50 medically vulnerable individuals that we are sheltering at the hotel operation. And through wonderful partnerships with our larger community, like the Salvation Army, we're able to find a safe place for everyone to sleep at night. But the need is very great. And we are doing our best to turn that sheltering experience into a successful story of a permanent, stable move out into housing. We've done very well at translating the effort of our guests and our case managers into housing results. In the last quarter of 2022, about 20 individuals moved into housing, which is a huge feat considering the constrictions of the current housing market. we love to continue to do this work. We want to continue being that conduit for love in our community. Thank you for contributing to keep this good work going. None of us can know what tomorrow will bring, but PACEM wants to be there to continue to meet the needs of our most vulnerable neighbors, the ones who are experiencing homelessness. And that is something that requires everyone's help and support, and that can take a variety of forms, and we appreciate all of them. So again, thank you for having us speak today, and thank you for all of the support that you have given and will give in the future.
Thank you, Liz. Rachel, would you mind showing us the social action slide for giving for today? Each week, we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges with the weekly Sunday morning offering, together we build the future of our congregation and our larger community. This is our shared ministry. During the music which follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to our website. Here in the sanctuary, you may bring cash or checks forward. You are invited to share not only your financial gifts, but also share the joys and sorrows in your hearts. Those online may put them in the chat box, and those of you in the sanctuary may come forward to place a stone in the water here at the front. The stone symbolizes what is in your heart, and the water represents the soothing embrace of our caring community that offers for your joys and sorrows. You may also leave us a note on the joy and sorrow paper provided here. Let us hold one another in compassionate embrace. And let us dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, "We accept your gifts with gratitude. May we use them wisely for the highest good." Our final reading is called Canals and Reservoirs, and it comes from the commentary on the Song of Songs by Bernard of Clairvaux. The person who is wise and loves well will see their future more as a reservoir than a canal. A canal simultaneously pours out what it receives and never takes the time to be filled. Today, there are many who live as canals, many who are more ready to speak rather than to listen, impatient to teach what they have not grasped, and full of presumption to govern others while they know not how to govern themselves. Unlike a canal, a reservoir retains water till it is filled, then discharges the overflow without loss to itself. The reservoir resembles a fountain that runs to form a stream or spreads to form a pool only when its own waters are brimming over. You must learn to await this fullness before pouring out your gifts. First, to be filled with love, then control the outpouring. The love that is benign and prudent does not flow outwards until it abounds within. Love is perfect only when full. They love more who realize they are loved.
Thank you, Caroline. Good morning again to all who are here, those who are joining us on Zoom. It is a great joy to be with you today and have a few minutes to share some thoughts with you about finding our center and the center of this faith, Unitarian Universalism. I do want to remind those of you who are interested to please do join us for the Newcomer Circle at 12:15. I welcomed a number of people who are here for the first time. I'm so glad that you have decided to share a Sunday morning with us, and I hope it'll be the first of many. And if you have a few minutes after the service, please do come back here into the sanctuary at 12:15, and we'll just have 30 minutes of conversation. And it's fun. I enjoy it, I know. So, they love more who realize they are loved. I personally cannot imagine a more beautiful and hopeful description of the purpose and possibilities of life, and especially of, I guess, what you might call spiritual life and religious community. For Bernard of Clairvaux, who, by the way, is a Catholic saint, but I'm not going to call him Saint Bernard because that might put a different image in your mind. For Bernard, at the center of life and of all human beings is love. A love that is available to each and every one of us. A love that we must cultivate and nurture like water in a reservoir, and then share with each other and with the world. So in exploring this love and the power of this love and the love that is at the center of our being and of this faith, I want to begin by sharing a story with you about the power and possibilities of life, a story that points to the importance of living one's life like a reservoir of love. A long time ago, there existed a small monastery that was very isolated from the outside world. All the monks at the monastery were quite elderly and had lived there for many, many years. Now, on the surface, there wasn't anything very extraordinary, unusual about this particular monastery. The monks did what, monks do. They attended daily prayer services, performed chores and work to support the monastic community, and offered spiritual support to a nearby village. But over the years, something changed at this monastery. You see, in a community dedicated to loving God and their neighbors, a community that sought, above all else, to be a reservoir of love, the monks had grown distant and apart. Rather than living with compassion and love for each other, their lives were consumed with mistrust and sometimes even bitterness. Although the monks lived in close proximity to one another and shared everything, in reality, they lived miles and miles apart as strangers and sometimes even enemies. After so many years of unhappiness, the leader of the monastery, the abbot, decided he had to do something. The monks were getting older, and because there was so much bad feeling in the air, no new monks had joined the monastery in many, many years. So the abbot decided to travel to a neighboring village to have a conversation and get some advice from the local rabbi. Unfortunately, after the abbot explained the problem, the rabbi told him that he didn't really have any simple answers or a 10-point plan for healing the brokenness among the monks. But the rabbi did tell the abbot about a curious dream he had had just the night before, a dream that had actually been about the monastery. In my dream, the rabbi told the abbot, a holy person, a person filled with the love of the divine and the love for each and every one of your monks, that holy person will soon be among you. Well, now, while the abbot thought that the rabbi's dream was interesting, he returned to the monastery feeling a little disappointed. After all, he'd been looking for, a detailed plan of action, maybe a good PowerPoint presentation, not some strange dream that probably didn't really mean anything. When the monks gathered to hear what the abbot had learned, all he could do was tell them about the rabbi's dream, that this holy person would be among them. Over the coming days and weeks, life at the monastery appeared to stay much the same. All the tasks and rituals were performed as they had been for years. But slowly, over time, something began to change. Something that transformed the way the monks lived, and especially the way they saw themselves and each other. You see, after the abbot had shared the details of the rabbi's dream, the monks couldn't stop thinking about that mysterious holy person who would soon be among them. Who was it? When would that person arrive? What would they say or do? But then, as time passed and no visitor from outside the monastery appeared, the monks began to consider another possibility. What if the holy person the rabbi had dreamed about was not someone they didn't know, but instead one of them, whose identity and nature had remained hidden and to this point undiscovered? Some of the monks even began to wonder if they themselves might be that holy person. And as the idea that one of them loved the other monks with all their heart, life in the monastery slowly began to change. The monks saw each other and treated each other in new ways. Instead of approaching one another with suspicion or mistrust, they listened, learned, laughed, and loved together. They approached their daily tasks with a new sense of purpose and joy, slowing down long enough to see the beauty and blessing all around them. And as the monks began to savor life rather than basically going through the motions, they found love at the center of their lives and their community. They saw love in each other's faces and experienced love in each other's presence. Life at the monastery was truly transformed from a place devoid of kindness and joy into a reservoir of love and friendship. Now, of course, this story is just that, a story, but the journey of the monks from unhappiness and mistrust to love and joy, from living as canals in which the goodness of life rushes in and out, joyless to and like into turning their lives into reservoirs filled with love. And I think this transformation points to a deep and profound truth, an insight not only at the heart of Bernard's thought, but also, I want to contend, at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. Now, according to Bernard, love is central to the human experience. Humankind is created by and in the image of a God whose nature is love. A God who feels love for each and every one of us and who hungers to love and be loved by the human family. And I would argue that this same love is at the heart of our faith tradition. Think for a moment about that reading from Robbie Walsh. As the earliest Universalists argued, and as Robbie reiterates so beautifully, there is love in this world. A love that welcomes us no matter who we are, what we believe, where we come from, or who we love. Much like a parent carrying their sleeping child, that love is kind, caring, and can see us through when we are exhausted and simply need to be tucked in at the end of the night. Of course, that love is not guaranteed or automatic because it depends on us, frail, broken human beings who too often live like canals rather than reservoirs. But as Robbie said so well, human beings are indeed the agents of that love. And if we allow love to shine in our lives, in our families, in our congregations, and in our communities, we can begin to build a world in which more and more of the human family feel welcomed, safe, valued, and cared for. Now, before I move on to what Bernard and the Universalists see as the implications of this all-encompassing love, I want to pause to say a word about its sources. You see, like our Universalist forebears, Bernard looked to the Bible for his understanding of God and humanity. Now, being a Roman Catholic, Bernard, of course, looked first and foremost to the Christian New Testament. But it's interesting that much of his understanding of God was derived from a pretty unusual and relatively obscure book in the Hebrew Bible, or what Christians call the Old Testament, called the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. And what makes this particular book so unusual is that unlike the gospel accounts or the many stories found in the Hebrew Bible, the Song of Songs is exclusively a poem. In fact, it's a love poem filled with language and imagery that is, how do I say this, passionate, and yes, at times even erotic. The Song of Songs chronicles the emotions and experiences of two lovers who are yearning and longing for one another. I have to say, when you first sit down and start reading this, you're like, interesting. Why is this in the Bible? And why did someone like Bernard, who I imagine was a pretty serious fellow, why did he find such importance in this book that, as I said, seems kind of out of place? And the answer is found in the fact that Bernard read the Song of Songs not as a love poem about two people, but instead as a metaphor describing the relationship between God, between the divine, and humankind. For him, for Bernard, the divine-human relationship is a love story, and God yearns to love and to be loved by us. And according to Bernard, the divine experiences our love most fully when we love and care for our neighbor. Let me just mention as well that this particular book in the Hebrew Bible, the Song of Songs, plays, in my view at least, an equally surprising role in the observance of Passover in the Jewish tradition. Passover marks, as you probably know, the liberation of the people of Israel from enslavement in Egypt. During the Passover meal, known as the Seder, the Exodus story is retold, and food that reminds the Jewish people of their enslavement and struggle for liberation is shared. But one thing many don't know about Passover is that, according to tradition, the scripture that should be read on the first night of Passover is that unusual love poem, the Song of Songs. And as I understand it, the reason this book is read is because it reminds the Jewish people of God's unending love. It was that love and the impact that it had on the people of Israel that made the Exodus possible. So if a God who is madly and passionately in love with us is at the heart of existence, our purpose, our calling, our fulfillment as human beings is to live that love, to welcome love, to express love, and to build a world in which that divine and universal love fills every corner of creation. As Unitarian Universalists, that's, in my view, our center. That's our purpose. That's why we're here. And the need to live with love at the center of our lives brings me back to the images in the reading Caroline shared a minute ago, canals and reservoirs. You see, as Bernard and Robbie Walsh both point out, our world so often seems to be moving in the opposite direction of love, in the direction of fear and unhappiness, rather than love and joy. And the reason the world does not resemble a reservoir of love is because human beings continually live as if our lives are filled with all kinds of substitutes and distractions. Things like ego, judgment, exclusion, hypocrisy, busyness, the pursuit of wealth and prestige and influence, and so on. Universal and unconditional love is calling to us, calling us to love one another. But we are so often, too often, unable and unwilling, too busy or too self-absorbed to listen and to answer that call. And the reason we fail to respond is because we relate to divine love too often as canals rather than reservoirs, allowing the love that is both within us and among us to rush through our lives as we spend so much of our time listening to voices telling us to care about things that matter so much less, power and prestige, telling us to get ahead by working harder and longer, rather than slowing down and listening for the voice and the presence of love in our lives. But there is another way, a way leading our lives and our world in the direction of that all-encompassing love that is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. And that other way, I believe, is the way of the reservoir, a way that enables us to listen for love within, to savor the beauty of life and family and community, and to experience the fundamental truth that we are loved, that we are precious, that we have been blessed with a life of wonder, beauty, and yes, love. And how do you live as a reservoir? By slowing down, by living mindfully and with intention, by devoting time to spiritual practice and nourishment, by sharing ourselves and serving others, and by living our lives from a place of gentleness and compassion rather than judgment or self-righteousness. Got a quote here from a Trappist monk, now deceased, Basil Pennington, who wrote lots of wonderful books about spiritual practice and mysticism. And he said, listen to what he says. He says, if we don't take the time to sit still and slow down, we will never perceive the gentle breezes that caress our necks and kiss our cheeks with love. If we don't slow down, we won't be aware of those gentle breezes of love. That, friends, is what it means to live as a reservoir, sitting still long enough to feel those gentle breezes. And I think the need to live as a reservoir rather than a canal is especially important for us, for Unitarian Universalists. We UUs affirm the existence and the transforming power of that love and commit ourselves to being its agents. That's the gift the Universalist side of our tradition has given us, and it is, in my view, the theological heart, the center, the greatest blessing of our tradition. But in our own lives and the lives of our religious communities, we sometimes can lose sight of that beautiful love because we often don't live as reservoirs. We use our doers, myself included, and we strive to translate our values into deeds of love and justice. And this congregation is no exception, and that's a good thing. But in doing so, we must remember to take time to savor, to listen to one another, to practice humility, and to find that center, that reservoir of love. As Bernard reminds us, if we take the time to be filled and to practice our faith from a place of love, we will live into that divine love and do our part to share it with creation. So friends, let me just conclude by saying, as you make your journeys of the Spirit, be a reservoir of love. Take time to listen, to savor, to welcome love into your life. And when you are filled with that boundless love that is the center of existence, share it. Share it with others, with this church community and with the world. Share your love with humility, with compassion, and with empathy. For when we are filled with love and then answer love's call, we truly say yes to life, yes to truth, and yes to love. Thank you so much for listening. Amen, and blessed be. So friends, I'd like to invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn. It is number 6 in the gray hymnal. The words will also be on the screen, just as long as I have breath. Please rise. You can remain standing. Caroline, would you please extinguish our chalice? I want to leave you with a very famous benediction and closing words from a great minister from the Unitarian side of our tradition, Theodore Parker. And he says, "Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual, works of love, its profession of faith, divine living." Friends, be well, take very good care of yourselves, of each other, and of the world. May this new year bring you joy and peace and hope and great, great love. We are so blessed by your presence, by your love, and by your kindness. Blessed be, and go in peace.